Portland used to be the poster child for cool American cities. Craft breweries, bike lanes, food carts on every corner. Now, the downtown office vacancy rate just hit 34%. That's not a slow decline, that's a full-on collapse. The city's most iconic skyscraper, Big Pink, sold for $45 million in 2025. Sounds decent until you learn it sold for $373 million just 10 years earlier. That's an 88% drop on a 42-story building. The county assessor basically said the tower is worth zero beyond the land it sits on. REI closed its Pearl District location, citing safety concerns. Wells Fargo is shutting down its operations offices by the end of 2025. Meals on Wheels shut down one of its centers because volunteers were being threatened. Oregon now has the highest marginal income tax rate in the entire country. Foot traffic downtown is still only about 70% of what it was before 2020. You know your city's in trouble when even the nonprofits are fleeing. The result? Over 700 commercial property owners filed tax appeals in a single year, draining the city's revenue while services keep getting worse. Portland isn't struggling. Portland is in free fall. And the scary part? There's no new office construction on the horizon. Landlords are basically giving space away just to get anyone through the door. A city that once attracted young creatives from across the country now can't convince businesses to stay. Chicago has been losing residents for 9 consecutive years. The metro area shed over 347,000 people through domestic migration since 2020 alone. Let that sink in. That's roughly the entire population of Tampa just gone, and the people leaving earn more than the people moving in. The average income gap between those departing and arriving is over $33,000 per year. That's your tax base walking out the door. In mid-2024, the city's unemployment rate hit 6.2%, the highest among major U.S. metro areas at the time. Property taxes keep climbing, yet infrastructure keeps crumbling. The L train system is over a century old in some sections, and it shows. If you've ever stood on a CTA platform in February wondering if the train is coming or if you should just accept your fate, you understand. Crime rates did improve in 2024, reaching a 5-year low. But here's the thing, a 5-year low after a 25-year high in 2021 isn't exactly cause for celebration. It's like bragging that your house fire is slightly smaller than last year's house fire. At this rate, Chicago will drop from the 3rd largest city to 4th behind Houston by 2035. That's not a prediction. That's basic math. And the people staying? They're dealing with a property tax system that just keeps climbing while potholes multiply like rabbits. Taxes are the number one reason Illinoisans consider leaving. Not weather, not crime, taxes. Toronto looked like a safe bet for years. Stable economy, a growing tech sector, and world-class diversity to boot. But the average home in the greater Toronto area now costs over $1 million, even after recent price corrections. Condos average around $627,000. For a condo? The city builds about 35,000 new homes per year when it needs at least 52,000 to keep up with demand. That gap isn't closing, it's widening. If you're a young professional trying to save for a down payment while paying Toronto rent, you're basically running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster. The rental vacancy rate sits around 0.5%. In a healthy market, that number should be closer to 3%. And those bidding wars everyone talked about? They've cooled slightly, but the damage is done. An entire generation learned that homeownership isn't a milestone. It's a fantasy. The average GTA selling price dropped about 7% from its 2022 peak, but that correction still leaves prices 43% higher than a decade ago. Cool discount, Toronto. Seattle's median home price doubled between 2010 and 2024, from roughly $444,000 to over $926,000. And you can thank the tech boom for that. Amazon's headquarters expansion alone brought a wave of 6-figure salaries that pushed housing costs beyond reach for everyone else. Rents for a basic efficiency apartment now average $2,238 per month. That's jumped by over $1,400 in just the last decade. Meanwhile, the maximum federal disability payment is $967 per month. Do the math on that and try not to get angry. Housing costs in Seattle run about 50% above the national average. King County had the second largest unsheltered population in the entire country in 2024, behind only Los Angeles. The relationship between rising rents and homelessness is stronger in Seattle than in most major American cities. New housing permits crashed almost 90% from their 2020 peak to fewer than 2,000 units in 2025. The pipeline is drying up right when it's needed most. Nearly 73% of residents now say businesses are leaving because operating costs are too high. Seattle built a tech paradise and forgot to build a city that regular people can actually afford. If you're watching this from Seattle right now, tell me in the comments, is it still worth it? Seriously, the numbers say one thing, but I want to hear from you. Denver was America's hottest real estate market for years. Everyone was moving there for the mountains, the sunshine, and the legal recreation, but growth without infrastructure is just chaos with better scenery. The metro area added hundreds of thousands of residents while transit and water systems struggled to catch up. And speaking of water, the Colorado River, which supplies a massive portion of Denver's water, has been in serious decline for over 2 decades. You're building suburbs in a place where the water supply is shrinking. That's bold. Home prices skyrocketed through 2022 before the correction hit hard. Affordable housing disappeared, and the middle class got squeezed from both directions. Rising property taxes on one side, stagnant wages on the other. Denver's light rail system, once praised as forward-thinking, doesn't connect where most people actually need to go. Traffic on I-25 is a daily horror movie with no ending. The city promised smart growth, but delivered sprawl with craft beer. Now residents are left paying premium prices for a city that can't deliver premium services. If you moved to Denver in 2019 thinking you were getting ahead of the curve, you were actually walking into a trap. The curve moved. You didn't. Dublin is one of Europe's richest cities with one of Europe's worst housing crises. Average rent for a one-bedroom in the city center now runs between €1,700 and €2,500 per month. On February 1st, 2026, fewer than 1,800 homes were available to rent across the entire country. Not Dublin, the entire country of Ireland. The government needs to build 52,000 homes per year. They're delivering around 33,000, and they've been missing targets for years. House prices have risen 91% since 2015, while general inflation was only 22%. That's not a housing market. That's a hostage situation. Nearly 60% of Irish people under 25 are considering immigration, and housing costs are the number one reason. Ireland's Department of Finance now predicts the housing crisis will last another 15 years. Let that sit with you. A generation of young Irish people aren't leaving because they can't find work. They're leaving because they can't find a place to live. As one nurse preparing to leave for Canada put it, you can have a career here, but you can't have a life here. Dublin is proof that a booming economy means nothing if nobody can afford to sleep in it. Minneapolis was building momentum. Light rail expansion, revitalized neighborhoods, a downtown that was actually attracting people. Then 2020 happened. The city experienced a massive crime surge that emptied the downtown core. Businesses shuttered, and office towers went dark almost overnight. 5 years later, the recovery is still painfully incomplete. The famous Nicollet Mall, once the heart of the city's retail district, has blocks of empty storefronts. Target, which is literally headquartered in Minneapolis, reduced its downtown footprint. When your own hometown company starts backing away, that sends a message. Property values in some downtown areas haven't recovered. Restaurants that survived 2020 couldn't survive the lack of foot traffic that followed. The city council's initial response made national headlines, and not in a good way. It created so much uncertainty that investment froze. Meanwhile, carjackings and violent crime in certain neighborhoods remained elevated for years. Minneapolis is trying to come back. You can see it in new housing developments and renewed transit plans. But if you've ever walked downtown on a Tuesday evening and counted more empty storefronts than open ones, you know the recovery has a long way to go. Vancouver is probably the most beautiful city on this list. Mountains, ocean, forests. It's absolutely stunning, and it's also nearly impossible to afford. The benchmark home price sits around $1.1 million. Detached houses average about $1.9 million. The price-to-income ratio is 13.4 to 1. In a healthy market, that should be around 3 to 1. For years, foreign investment poured into Vancouver real estate, treating homes like stock portfolios instead of places where people actually live. Entire condo towers sit partially empty while you commute an hour from the suburbs because you can't afford to live where you work. Rents for a one-bedroom average around $2,400 per month. The city's 2025 sales numbers were the lowest in over 2 decades. Benchmark prices have fallen about 22% from the 2022 peak, but that drop barely registers when the starting point was absurd. Vancouver is where the Canadian dream goes to get a reality check. Beauty doesn't pay rent, and mountains don't lower mortgage rates. If your city made this list, drop a comment and tell me what it's really like living there.